cats and kittens, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the MonkeyBoy Presents the DC Comics Superhero Collection by Eaglemoss, and today I'm happy to bring you the 6th issue in the Blackest Night, Brightest Day subseries, Parallax. And this is the first issue to feature a Yellow Lantern member, or a Sinestro Corps member. It's not technically a member of the Sinestro Corps, though. It is the entity of fear in a possessed Hal Jordan. And this was made most famous, I think, this version of Hal Jordan was made most famous when they killed him off once upon a time in the DC Universe. He went evil, he tried to kill a bunch of heroes, he ended up sacrificing himself, but he died as this villain known as Parallax. It was brought back for the Sinestro Corps War recently in the comic books, setting up the whole Blackest Night thing. If you don't know the character from the comic books, you may know the name, at least, of Parallax from the movie featuring Ryan Reynolds that came out just a couple of years ago, Green Lantern the Motion Picture, where he was the big bad yellow entity of fear that he more or less is in the comic books. He looked totally different in the movie. It was not exactly accurate, but there wasn't too much about that movie that was. Other than that, you might know him from a very brief cameo appearance in the animated film Green Lantern Emerald Knights, which is far superior to the live-action version. If you want to know Hal Jordan's origins, check that animated film out. Otherwise, if you're totally unaware of him, well, that's why we have the magazine, which we'll take a look at first, and it'll tell you everything you need to know about the villainous Parallax, or the entity of fear. And then we'll take a look at the figure itself, covering the good, the bad, and the ugly, as always. I hope you like this one, folks. I'm sort of on the fence about it. It's neat, but I have problems. We'll cover that soon. Sit back, relax. I hope you enjoy issue number 6 of the Blackest Night, Brightest Day sub-series collection by Eaglemoss, Parallax. First up, the character section. Starts out with a brief history of Hal Jordan, how he was selected after a member of the Green Lantern Corps named Abin Sur accidentally crash-landed on the planet. Hal quickly rose through the ranks of the Green Lantern Corps and became known as the greatest of the Green Lanterns. Next, the magazine details the being known as Parallax. We learn that centuries ago, the Guardians of the Universe discovered the emotional color spectrum in the universe, and that each emotion was represented not only by a color, but also by an alien entity. Parallax is the living embodiment of fear. The entity was wreaking havoc across the universe, so the Guardians sprung into action, captured the being, and trapped it within the central power battery on Oa, which explains why the Green Lantern's power rings don't work against the yellow impurity. The magazine then talks about Hal Jordan's downfall. It's years into his career, and his hometown of Coast City is decimated by the evil cyborg Superman. Unable to rebuild his city and return his people to life, he seeks the assistance of the Guardians of the Universe, who question his sanity and even ask him to turn over his power ring at one point. Hal Jordan was determined to gain as much power as he could and slowly decimated every member of the Green Lantern Corps, taking their power rings in the process so that he might return Coast City to life. Hal went on to destroy the central power battery on Oa, unknowingly freeing Parallax from its prison, and it then joined with him completely. Hal then changed his name to Parallax and began to try and rewrite time. Not long after this, it was discovered that the sun was going to go supernova, destroying the Earth. Hal realized he was the only being in the universe capable of reigniting the sun, and so, in a last heroic effort, Hal Jordan, not Parallax, sacrificed himself to reignite the sun. The pair discovered that a hint of Parallax still remained within Hal Jordan's personality. Together, Hal Jordan and the Spectre fought back the evil entity. Hal dealt with his own demons and the blood that was on his hands, and in the end, the Spectre helped return Hal Jordan to life. As Hal Jordan acclimated to being both alive and a Green Lantern again across the universe, Sinestro had learned how to use Parallax's energy and created his own corps of lanterns, the Sinestro Corps. With Parallax's help, Sinestro and his corps wreaked havoc across the galaxy and attacked the Green Lantern's home planet of Oa. It was during one of their conflicts with the Sinestro Corps that Parallax managed to take over the body of the newest Green Lantern from Earth, Kyle Rayner. At one point during the Blackest Night event, Hal Jordan willingly bonded with Parallax again so that the pair could do battle with a corrupted Black Lantern version of the Spectre. We look at a few more stories from the Blackest Night event. First up, Adventure Comics, Blackest Night. In this story, we find the evil Superboy Prime has somehow managed to travel through time and space back to his original timeline and his home planet of Earth Prime. However, all of his evil exploits have been written in comic book form, and the entire populace of the planet Earth Prime is aware of all of his evil deeds. As the emotionally unbalanced Superboy Prime tries to deal with all of this, he's suddenly confronted with an evil zombified version of his one-time friend, Alexander Luthor. It's just an okay entry in the Blackest Night series. We next look at Booster Gold, Blackest Night. At the opening of this story, Booster Gold is still mourning the loss of his friend and ally Ted Kord, the second Blue Beetle, so who should rise from the grave but Ted Kord, dressed as the second Blue Beetle. Throughout the course of the story, Booster is forced to fight against his one-time friend, now possessed by evil, and even teams up with the third and current Blue Beetle, Jaime Reyes. Together the pair free Ted from the evil influence of Necron and the Black Lanterns, and Booster is finally able to put his friend to rest. Finally, we have Superman, Batman, Blackest Night. In my opinion, this is one of the most fun stories to come out of Blackest Night. We find Frankenstein leading a group of heroes known as Shade into Gotham City, trying to track down Dr. Kirk Langstrom, also known as Man-Bat, when who should enter the mix but Bizarro, who is trying to rescue Man-Bat, seeing him as another misunderstood wannabe superhero, and then suddenly Solomon Grundy rises from the grave, revealing himself to be a new member of the Black Lantern Corps. It's wild, it's crazy, and it's extremely well illustrated. The Iconography section is a nice big 2-page fold-out poster featuring the Sinestro Corps. It talks about their homeworld of Quord, how the color yellow on the emotional spectrum represents fear, how their avatar is, of course, the entity of fear itself, Parallax. It features a number of other members in Sinestro's frightening Corps, and finally, my favorite part, it shows the Sinestro Corps Oath. Parallax's Friends and Foes section features nothing but Black Lanterns once again, including Black Lantern versions of Hal Jordan's predecessor Abin Sur, the first Starman Ted Knight, and the villain Captain Boomerang. And here we have Parallax, or at least Hal Jordan possessed by the entity known as Parallax, and for the most part it's a very nice figure. My problems don't really have to do with the figure itself necessarily, it has to do with the version that they gave us of Parallax, but for what this is, it's pretty nice. I really love this sculpt. There's a lot of great details going on here, not just his musculature, but also the symbol on the center. And the black portion of the costume has a really nice armored sort of look to it. The cape is really great, it's big, and it's blowing around in a lot of different directions and different ways. Lots of great shading and shadowing and textures and crinkles and things you can see on the cape there. And a lot of different shades of green. He is not just one shade of green. Honestly, it's more like an emerald. You can see the bodysuit and the gloves and the boots are all a nice metallic sort of emerald, but then the shoulder pads are slightly deeper green, and he even has some detailing around the collar that are different shades of green. Of course, the emblem is just this green glowing sort of energy source, and finally the cape itself is yet another shade of green. So really great paint job going on here. Really clean for the most part, nice lines. I really like his boots and his gloves and his hands, and the fact that almost every finger has been molded, sculpted, and detailed. And his head sculpt is also very nice. He is not for everyone though, I don't think, and I do have some issues with the figure, only because I would have preferred a different interpretation of Parallax. But of course we'll talk about that and some more in the next section in just a moment. Parallax stands atop the Sinestro Corps logo, and the bottom of the base features his name and serial number. And so you can compare him, here he is next to the uncorrupted Hal Jordan as Green Lantern. A shot with all of the other members from the DC collection that are technically members of the Sinestro Corps. And finally a group shot with Parallax representing the Sinestro Corps in the color spectrum. Parallax is a very nice figure. I want to get that across right at the top here. It is a very nice figure. It's just not the version of Parallax that I would have gone with. This is more Hal Jordan as Parallax, and while it's very, very nice, it is a bit of a disappointing figure. And we'll start with the good, and there is a lot of good. Like I said, for what he is very, very nice. The sculpt is exceptional, the pose is classic, everything is hand-painted, there are no stickers on him. He does have a ring, even though it's just a little dollop of paint, but you can see the paint is really exceptional here. There are so many different shades of green, lots of texturing, lots of shading. The boots have all sorts of intricate designs. You can see the black through patches on the boots, and there are white highlights as well. The white is very nice too. It's a very pure white, but it does have a slight tint of green to it as well, like a mint green almost. It's really cool. The cape is nicely detailed. It has great tucks and folds. It's big. It's blowing around. You can see that really intricate detail of the white detailing on the cape itself. His torso is fantastic, lots of musculature, nice flat black paint as well on portions of the gloves and the torso. And there's a really cool texture to it as well. It looks like plated armor almost. The hands are well done. Every digit has some detail to it. And as I said, he does have the ring, even though it is just a dollop of paint on the finger. It is hard to see regardless because of where it's placed. The chest is also nicely done. The shoulder pads are cool. I actually dig those a lot. There's you can see the different shades of green and the paint there, especially when you look at the chest on top of it. And the way the cape is flowing off of those shoulder pads, and there's great detail on the shoulder pads too, sculpted detail. The emblem and the centerpiece are also very nice. The logo isn't really a logo so much as it's just green energy glowing within him, but it is hand painted, and I sort of like the way it's bleeding out of the edges a little bit, as though the energy is spilling out. And there's great detail around the collar as well, different tones of green. What is here is very good. On to the bad, and my nitpicks are out of the way first here. There's some minor paint bleed, but that's sort of expected most of the time. Also, the cape on the figure is made of resin. It's plastic and not lead. So that's sort of disappointing, but it works. It would have been pretty hard to do this type of cape, I think, in lead. My biggest problem on the figure itself, judging it as a figure, is the head sculpt. It's pretty poor. I know it's supposed to be Hal when he is possessed almost entirely by the Parallax entity from Blackest Night, Brightest Day. It still just doesn't look very good to me. I love the mask, I love the eyes, and the hair isn't bad. The fact that they worked the gray into it is kind of cool. It just looks really heavy-handed, it's very thickly done, and his teeth should look more like fangs. It almost looks like he's wearing braces, and not so much has these jagged, nasty teeth. So the head sculpt is my biggest complaint on the figure as a figure. My only other complaint is, again, I would have preferred the Entity of Fear version of Parallax. Make this one of the special edition figures and give us the big alien yellow creature. You could even make it out of resin if you wanted to. If you make it transparent resin, I think that would have been a pretty cool touch. But that's my other huge complaint. I don't think this should have been called Parallax necessarily. I think it should have been Hal Jordan Parallax, something like that. And finally, the ugly. Nothing really aside from him being an ugly looking character. It's a very solid lead and resin figure. Overall, I'm being pretty hard on this figure, honestly. I like it. I really do like it for what it is. I just would have preferred the entity version of Parallax over the possessed Hal Jordan form of Parallax. Having another Hal Jordan in the collection, especially if you've already collected the regular collection like I have, it seems redundant to have yet another Hal Jordan. But I will admit it is cool having him on the shelf next to Hal as Green Lantern and the Spectre. You sort of have the progression of the character there in a sense. It's also neat having Hal next to Parallax next to Kyle Rayner, and you sort of have the whole Emerald, Twilight, New Dawn storyline right there. But I don't like him in the color spectrum necessarily. He's cool having alongside Sinestro, but I'd much rather have Sinestro on my shelf representing the spectrum instead of this figure. Do I feel he was right to make as the first Sinestro Corps member in this series? No. Like I said at the beginning, I would have preferred a character in the Sinestro Corps uniform. It's really cool having him in the collection. I dig the whole Parallax idea. I just feel there were other members of the Sinestro Corps they could have made before this one and pushed him down the line or made him a special edition like I said. And I hope you have enjoyed this review of issue number 6 in the Blackest Night, Brightest Day collection, Parallax. He is cool, he's just not great, unfortunately. Please stay tuned for a quick teaser trailer of the next figure in the regular series collection. We're going back to the regular Eaglemoss collection with this one. It's another villain, though, which is always cool to have villains, and it's another member of Batman's Rogues Gallery, a pretty recent addition to his Rogues Gallery as well. So I hope you stay tuned for that, as always. I am your host, the Monkey Boy, aka J2's Friends. Thanks for watching.